Hey everyone, I'm Alli Dahl from the Disrupt Education podcast.
And I'm Peter Hostrawser. The workforce is changing, but education isn't.
If students are going to thrive, they'll need to create their own opportunities like the students on this series.
To do that, they need skills. Not the I memorized who the Renaissance painters were skills, or I've read the Canterbury Tales skills. We're talking about the pragmatic skills that get you a job or let you do your own thing.
There's only one way to acquire these skills, and it ain't lectures, textbooks, or tests.
That's where Pegasus comes in. Pegasus is creating the first white-collar trade school.
Superior to college in every way, Pegasus is a career-focused, experiential program that enables high school grads to start lucrative careers 3 years earlier and 100K ahead of college grads, and can be job ready from the moment they graduate.
Pegasus has also opened doors to recent college graduates who can't find jobs and acts as a career bridge that leads from a hopeless situation to a bright future.
And employers? They get the first ever AI native entry level workforce that comes fully job ready. No more training, no more lost year productivity, just instant lift with no company resources required.
So if you're a student or an employer, go to pegasus.com and let Pegasus change your life forever. Now sit back, relax, and let's enjoy the student series on the Disrupt Education podcast.
I think I'm on this podcast because I owe it all to my education and vocational school for getting to the point that I am today and giving me a 3-year head start in that journey.
I'm curious, walk us back, you just said you owe what you have now with like a 3-year head start. That's interesting. So what happened in high school that you feel like you got this head start and found direction?
The trades are in more demand than ever. Even in the competitions I was doing, that final national competition, we got new gear specifically for that. There's just so much more to it. The trades are so much more complicated, and I highly suggest considering it because it's so much harder to get jobs now. And they're frequently missing class because of that, because they're all shooting on the week. And so I think that's something important to consider, and why I would tell my parents it doesn't matter is because their definition of success is different. There's some people who are getting C's, get degrees at my school who are going to be the next Bill Burr.
You're listening to the Disrupt Education podcast, powered by UScience. Here are your hosts, Peter Hostrawser and Alli Dahl.
Welcome to this episode of the Disrupt Education podcast. I'm Peter Hostrawser. That is Alli Dahl. We're going. What's happening, Alli? How are you?
I'm good. I mean, we are in our student series, and I don't know that I expected to be here when we started this year, being bold and disrupting education. And, we're doing something bold again. We're having a student that Mark Covell introduced us to. So I feel like that's pretty cool to just have this growing network of awesome educators doing awesome things. And then our heart really is with what's a student perspective, how are they experiencing education, and what does that mean? And so how can we be bold? We started the year bold, and some of the conversations have been, but then I always want to know, what does that mean from a student lens? And hearing their stories always invigorates me. So I'm really excited to dig into this week's conversation.
Yeah, ditto. So we have Samantha Rosinski. Did I say that correctly? Rosinski?
Yep.
All right, solid. That's my Indiana. You never know what kind of accent's going to come out of me. But you were introduced to us by Mark Covell, and you built some pretty big experiences around your interest from anywhere from career and technical education, film production, internships, storytelling, and using all those experiences to create opportunities. I love this because I actually was a broadcast journalism major way back in the day. So I did a little bit of not quite film work, but some of the back stuff way back on VHS tapes and SVHS. But I digress. Your journey has, like I said, included all these different things. And let's give you the introduction to our guests, or to our listeners. Is that pretty close to who you are? What are you doing now? And where you're at. You're in New York. You could be in LA. You could be anywhere. So, but welcome, and yeah, give our listeners a little bit of a backdrop on who you are, Sam.
Yes, thank you for having me. My name is Samantha Rosinski, and I'm a film and television production student currently at Chapman University, which is in California, but I'm originally from Pennsylvania. And this summer, I'm currently staying on the East Coast again in New York. And yeah, I've had a broad range of experience. I met Mark Covell in trade school at Middlebucks Institute of Technology, where I studied multimedia technology and found my love of film. It's not quite VHS, it's more
I hope not.
digital now. I don't know any of that stuff, but constantly editing in Premiere and Avid for those who know anything about editing. And yeah, and right now, this summer, I'm currently exploring more of the marketing side of editing within film, and I'm working at HBO Max. But I think I'm on this podcast because I owe it all to my education at vocational school for getting to the point that I am today and giving me a 3-year head start in that journey. So it's very competitive, but I feel like I'm much more confident now going into it.
That's one of the things we wanted to highlight this summer is students who kind of found purpose and found direction in high school. Because like so often, the conversation around education is students don't know themselves when they graduate. There's not a plan, or they don't feel confident in their plan post graduation. And we were like reaching out, we're like, who did have a plan, and like what how did we get there? So I'm curious, like walk us back, to you just said you owe what you have now with like a 3-year head start. That's interesting. So what happened in high school that you feel like you got this head start and like found direction?
Yeah, what didn't happen in high school? I think high school was such a pivotal year. I didn't peak in high school, thank God, but it was definitely a big journey. I'd say my start within Middlebucks Institute of Technology specifically started late middle school. They came to my school and they were showing a slideshow of all these different careers within the trades, anything from like plumbing and automotive, cosmetology, that sort of thing. But something that really caught my eye was in the presentation, there was a photo of some students playing around with cameras and with the green screen. And I'd watched BTS videos on YouTube my whole life. And I was like, oh, I can do that as a career. And that was the first time that I really realized, oh, people do pursue this. And it's not just something that I see on my computer screen. And so I was like, okay, I got to sign up for that. And I think a big thing at the time for me was that there was still a stigma surrounding like vocational schools and how it's only for people who don't go to college and that sort of thing. And that was a big conversation I had with my parents. Was this the right path for me? I was an honor student, so I think at the time I was thinking more like I'd go into engineering or do something more traditional for at least my academic high school. But no, I ended up getting to take that unique path of going to Middlebucks Institute of Technology. And Mark Covell wasn't there at the time for like, I think the first 2 years that I was there. But I think something that my school had the unique opportunity of is that I was in the same class for 3 years. So I had the same mentor. And I think that was really pivotal to where I am today. We explored a lot of things in that class, so I got to really get my hands on a lot of different things. We had website coding, Photoshop, and a lot of other things. I was a part of SkillsUSA, which is like a trade school organization, and they also do a lot of trade competitions. And so I really got to gain confidence in those technical skills and also they had opportunities for like speech competitions, so I got to learn a bit more of the personal skills as well, which is something I didn't realize until like now in college and interviewing for different positions is so crucial and that sort of thing. And yeah, I think the biggest thing that I got from Middlebucks Institute of Technology was the confidence. Like I'm at a very competitive school with a lot more people that are much more talented than me, and I can say that. I'm probably one of the worst filmmakers there. But I think that I had such a great mentor that always like vouched for me in high school. And I think even when I had those moments where I was embarrassed at a screening where I screened my short film and I'm like, this isn't as cool as some of the other ones, I always kind of thought back to high school and how I tried so hard and how my mentor was always really vouching for me. And I think that just gave me a lot of confidence in high school. And having those technical skills to back me up really helped. I got a lot of certifications along the way and some recognitions along the way at the Skills USA. I got second in Atlanta, Georgia at the digital
Right.
cinema competition. So yeah, trade school is definitely a bracket on my resume, to say the least.
I love that. Putting yourself out there and being able to fail in front of others. There's no shame in being like if you think you're the not as best in the room. I always try to get the rooms where I'm the dumbest person, which is
Mhm,
often. So, but
mhm.
but to learn these things, I want to go into. So you are an academic. How without putting your whole family on the spot, but I have to, like, because this is something like as a father myself, this is a hard discussion and a hard kind of thought process for a lot of parents to think about. How did that exactly go? Because I think one of the things that we're talking about in this whole bold, like not just this series, but our entire year is career studies actually college is part of career. It's not either or, and you're obviously doing that as well. But yeah, what was that conversation? What were the back and forths like, hey, well, this is what college is, this is where you're going to go. What did you like do anything different? I'm just so curious about how that conversation went.
Yeah, I mean, it was so long ago. It was like 6 years ago, which for me is a long time. I'd say, yeah, I was always an academic, and still to this day, my dad is asking me, like, did you get straight A's this year? Even though it does not matter for film students. If you know, you know.
Hmm.
Grades do not matter. But yeah, I think the conversation was, I was in the kitchen, I was like, hey, this really cool, groovy thing's going on. I saw this photo of people with cameras, and that looks really cool. And they're
Hmm.
like, they have a certain set perspective of, I guess, trade schools when they were students at the time. And it was like, oh, there's plumbers there that like maybe smoke weed or something. And like they're just in it to get out of school as quickly as possible. And I was like, it seems to have changed now. And I think especially like once Mark Covell really came into MBIT, he's kind of like shaped that into like a brand. And it's the MBIT, like the student population, the amount of applicants they get has far surpassed when I applied. And I think that just really goes to show that like what I've learned from Middlebuck Institute of Technology is that they have so much more access to get the equipment we need to learn the trades, and the trades are in more demand than ever. Yeah, like even in the competitions I was doing, that in final national competition, we got new gear specifically for that, and so yeah, there's just so much more to it. The trades are so much more complicated, and I highly suggest considering it because it's so much harder to get jobs now too, especially even in film.
Your LinkedIn would give a lot of people a run for their money. I would let's just kind of list some stuff here that you have on there. Videographer and photographer for Bucks County Intermediate Unit, graduation photographer, assistant editor of A Taste of History, marketing intern, Bucks County Opportunity, staff photographer for the Panther, production intern at something creature. I can't remember my handwriting. Post-production
Huffman.
intern at
Something creative.
Partisan. There it is. Soundstage assistant, screen acting, editing assistant, post-production lab assistant, summer 2026 intern, fellow HBO Max marketing, audio, visual intern. You also did mention the Skills USA. You were a president, state and national competitor, fall leadership conference student of the year.
That sounds like
That's,
a trades academic genius.
I mean, that's a ton of experience. So I'm listing this because I want people to understand like you have a more experience than some people who have like 10 plus years in their career. That's a lot of experiences. And so I'm curious like how how do you think these experiences maybe shaped you to kind of your path, but also like do you think you would have had these experiences had you gone into a more traditional high school route?
I would say in high school, I learned that my most pivotal year, I'd say my junior year, was the year that I just took on the most stuff. And I think it's going to be different for everybody. I think you can still be just as successful as I may look on my LinkedIn with fewer opportunities. And that's just my take. But for me, I'm someone who really enjoys to just kind of explore and dabble in everything. Those first two production internships I had at Huffman Creative and at Partisan were unpaid. A lot of the media industry is unpaid before you can enter. So it's just all about getting experience. And so I'm like, if it's unpaid, I might as well just kind of throw my hat in different things. I felt like there was a lot less pressure. And yeah, I just kind of, if I ever have a free moment, I want to be working somewhere, learning from somebody. I think what Peter was saying earlier about kind of like you don't want to be the biggest fish in the pond. I think the biggest thing that I've gotten, even from mostly from college too, is like I am one of the smaller fish and seeing other people's LinkedIns and that sort of thing. Don't compare yourself to others, but I definitely take it as motivation when I see all these people getting internships at, Disney and that sort of thing to continue to work and to work from the ground up at those smaller production companies. And yeah, I've learned more in college. I've learned just how to bounce back and to stay motivated and also to like be more of a people person and not to lean too hard with like, oh, like being the most talented person in the room. Because I realized that that only gets you so far. And that's something that was always said to me, but I didn't really realize until I was in the industry that like just make sure like like how you're being perceived too and that sort of thing and make sure you're the most helpful as well. And so I've really enjoyed all of those experiences I've learned of various different things. And I think along the way you gain a lot of mentors and people that vouch for you. So taking on three jobs sometimes at a time in high school like does benefit and the education is not going to get me anywhere. It's everything else.
Matt, no, you're nailing so many of the questions I want to ask. So thank you. I'm just thinking like, I'm an internship coordinator at a high school, so I get it about the internship. So I just want to hear from you, like what have all these internships and experiences like? What has it taught you about the difference actually between learning about a career and then actually experiencing it? Because I think at Middlebucks, like you do experience it in the learning, so it's a little bit different, but how can you see that difference?
I think it's kind of funny because as someone who's very new to like the corporate world, especially this summer, um,
Mhm.
the jobs are kind of a lot similar to being in school. And I think I hope like some high schoolers listening to this might take away. It's not that different. They're still like, you make your certain friends, you make your certain circle, you go to lunch at similar times and you hang out and that sort of thing. Um, but yeah, it's kind of about how you present yourself. I think the biggest thing I've learned is like, especially as an academic, you're going to get your tasks and that sort of thing at your job and that sort of thing. But it's about what you do with those tasks and what you do above and beyond those tasks, especially. Definitely don't sit around. And especially in my situation, a lot of my internships were in Los Angeles, and I went to school in California to meet those people because
Mm.
that's where my industry's at. And so I need to remind myself not to get too comfortable in my environment because I'm only there for a semester. And these production companies have so many other connections and such a big circle. So when I was at my internship at Huffman Creative, that's a commercial production company. They've done music videos for like Ariana Grande and that sort of thing. And so they're in communications with like very big like color and finishing companies and that sort of thing. And so I have access for a limited time to all those lists of people and names and people that I can reach out to. And sometimes I don't think I'm reaching out enough.
Mm.
Yeah.
And so it's just a big deal is the network and trying to build that network before I get out of college. I think especially as someone in the creative industry, it's more dire to get that before you leave school because right now I have so much access and that's going to go in 1 year. I have one
Mhm.
more year left. So yeah, just making the most of them.
So you've had all these awesome professional experiences and you're and a new one this summer. So like what has maybe surprised you the most about working in professional environments you didn't expect?
Yeah, I think to go back to it, I think just it's more casual than you think. I mean, like, like this is not even like such a professional question. Like, especially in the creative field, I don't know if you've been in offices like that. It's just like they're wearing jeans and stuff. I'm coming in with my like business casual, almost business professional. So unfortunately, I think that's my biggest takeaway and biggest culture shock. People are throwing around language, and I think as a filmmaker, there is some Devil Wears Prada type people. That I have met executives, senior executives. And again, it's like doing those crazy tasks that the executives give you, like making a film for their kids that they like their kids' baseball game on the side, stuff like that, like does happen. And I think that was my biggest shock. And you just gotta do it and like take with it what you will. I think during one of those tasks like that, I learned how to edit an iMovie, which is a bit under my level of
Mm.
type of software I use. But along the way, I learned some different techniques and that sort of thing. So yeah, a lot of curveballs can get thrown.
We just want to pause right here and share a little bit more about UScience.
Well, instead of us actually talking about it, Allie, why don't we just roll clips of guests speaking about it? Sound good?
That was awesome.
All right, let's roll these.
We really had to say that was where we brought in UScience, intentional planning, so that no matter who they spoke with, whether it be their counselor, whether it be one of our CTE coordinators, whether it be one of our programs that were coming in to help, that they were the ones saying, hey, this is what I see myself. This is what I'm good at. These are my strengths. This is how you can help me. Our student outcomes started to change where we never guessed they would. Our failure rates went down.
So when I ran into UScience and kind of started digging into the evidence-based research that both the interest and aptitude side of UScience sits on, I thought, this is it. This is how we make college not a very expensive career exploration for students. This is how we get kids in the right field.
What about someone who's an engineer and they say, but I really don't want to go to college? Well, UScience can do that little subtle shift away from engineering and just say, well, what about mechatronics and PLC technicians? So it allows you to pinpoint where a student may feel comfortable, and you're not just guessing.
Well, there you have it, Allie. This is what people on our podcast say. We don't need to say it again and again.
Everybody who brings up UScience, even the messages and the conversations we have outside of the podcast, they all go back to everything you just heard and more.
Exactly. Hit up uscience.com/disrupt education podcast. Basically, you'll see how UScience Bright Path uses data, aptitude, insights, and real-world connections to close the career exposure gap. Just request a demo there. Tell them you heard about them on Disrupt Education podcast. Trust me, you're not going to be disappointed. Reach out today. So we have a summer session for our internship courses in Naperville, and I literally had that conversation with the student this morning, and he said the exact same thing. That's amazing. Like, I thought like the corporate culture was just like everybody's lined up and just hustling and working, and it's a little bit more casual. So that's good to hear that. That's not just here in Chicagoland. It's in New York, LA, and a bunch of different places. But that culture piece is very interesting. You've said a lot about like relationships and mentors and things like that. And opening doors for you. I'm gonna guess that networking has really helped open doors. I want to kind of like go to students now and or even educators in, at least secondary, obviously post-secondary, but what advice would you give those students and or educators who hear the word networking and think, we're not ready for that yet?
I'm still not ready for it. Whenever I hear a networking event, I run. In my head.
Of course.
I'm the biggest person to ask to say like, should I go to a networking event? Oh no, I'm good. But I'd say the biggest piece of advice is don't think of it as networking. I think as someone who's in college, like we have networking things all the time. We just don't call them that. But at work, it's much more formal. And it's like called coffee dates and that sort of thing. But I think of it as you're going to your school club. find those school clubs. If you're going to college, find those school clubs that really interest you, that may not even be relevant to your career, and meet those people, practice talking about your interests and that sort of thing. That's networking, and you just don't realize it.
Mm.
And so you're going to get in these more intimidating environments with people in suits and people in button-ups. And they're just like those kids at your clubs at the end of the day, and you have to realize that. And networking is not about showing your LinkedIn resume. It's about showing you as a person. For me, it's about showing what's my favorite TV shows. Like, I need to stay up to date with the pop culture. And I know that depends.
Mhm.
It depends on what your major is. But I would just take it one step at a time. If you're someone who, like me, who's very antisocial, go out to your high school clubs, to your college clubs, practice connecting with other people because it's the same once you get into the corporate environment.
Do you want to
Mm.
share what your favorite show is? Just FYI.
Sure. Sure. I'd say, well, I'm working at HBO now, and my biggest thing is Game of Thrones. And
Ah,
the
there we
Dragon
go.
just came out, first new episode of season 3. So that
Got
was
it.
very exciting for me.
Nice.
That's an epic, cultural. I don't. It's not even a moment. It's like a whole. It's a whole world in its own. You said something earlier that I'm like, oh, interesting. You said, your parents still ask about your grades every semester, and then you were like, it doesn't really matter if you know film. And I hadn't really thought about this in a while. So my brother, he went to Berklee School of Music out in Boston, and there the goal is not to graduate. It's literally to get signed as a musician and drop out. That is the goal. Like, you're actually doing it wrong if you graduate. Yeah, and the majority of kids do graduate, but the big names, people who go there and get signed or work for a band or whatnot, they typically do it before they graduate. So, like, people aren't necessarily familiar with that. I hadn't really thought about it in a long time until you mentioned that. Is it similar in film? Like, is it you get jobs based on who you know? Is the goal to graduate? Like, I'm curious what that means in film because I don't know, and I was wondering if it was similar.
Yeah, it's great you brought that up because I think one of the biggest things of me saying like, oh, I'm one of the smaller fish in the pond, that metaphor, really is about that. And I think I would say most people at my school in the film program graduate, because a lot of the work is on and off, especially if you're on a per project basis. But I'm seeing some really t the most talented like cinematographers in my year. Um, going on these incredible productions with amazing music artists and that sort of thing. And I think that's also an indicator of success. They don't have anything on their LinkedIn, but they're constantly working independently on projects. And they're frequently missing class because of that, because they're all shooting on the week. And so I think that's something important to consider, and why I would tell my parents it doesn't matter is because their definition of success is different, and you're not gonna be able to prove it on certain platforms, but you have to know it within yourself, and that sort of thing. And so, yeah, I think it very much depends on the person. But there's some people who are getting C's, get degrees at my school who are going to be the next Spielberg, and so that's something to keep in mind. It depends on the industry for sure.
We have the next Rosinski. So there you go.
Thank you.
Right here on the Disrupt Education podcast, and when you do make it, we're definitely going to throw that out there. I do want to kind of tap into a little bit of storytelling, right? With purpose. You know, Mark at MBIT is now amazing at telling stories of what's happening. I'm gotta guess that you probably sparked that when he came in. I'm just gonna throw that out. We don't know if that's fact or not, but I will nudge him and say that. But you've done some documentary work in Zambia. You've done some community service, ways to amplify voices, and storytelling overall has impact. Um, yes, you've done the entertainment and media, but there's a service component to your work. So why is storytelling with purpose important to you?
I think storytelling with purpose is it's something that just kind of gives me a reason for doing what I do beyond for myself and for my own imagination and fantasy world in my head that got me started here.
Mhm.
It's kind of a reminder of like the power that filmmaking can have. I think the biggest thing is like people ask me, why are you doing film? You're not curing cancer, that sort of thing. And so I try and prove that wrong whenever I can, whenever I have the time.
Mm.
My biggest start within career and technical education and my first careers in high school were related to nonprofits. And my first internship was with a nonprofit and marketing for them and that sort of thing. And so I kind of learned a lot through film by helping other people. And I found that it really just made me very happy. And so that's the simple answer is it makes me happy to do those things, even more so than to work at some crazy cool company. And so, yeah, I think one of the biggest things, not to jump ahead here, was my recent trip to Zambia in the spring was kind of a big passion project of mine because I work with a lot of different nonprofits. But this one was very different. Ever since I graduated high school, my mom's an occupational hand therapist. And so she had a lot more freedom to kind of go and travel and explore. And she started like getting scholarships and getting to go to Zambia to provide free medical and surgical care in developing countries and that sort of thing with this organization. And I realized that a lot of their media was very outdated. And so I kind of proposed this idea when I was like in Boston with my mom, like, what if I went with you and got to go to Zambia and refresh their content and like create a documentary and that sort of thing. And so yeah, that came from a long span of trade school nonprofit videos that I made. And yeah, I just kind of got to fulfill that dream, and that was definitely the happiest I've been this year for sure.
So much purpose in there, Allie. I love it.
So much purpose. Has that kind of the storytelling part, it's a cool angle like in your journey. You're not making it an angle, but it's unique. Not everyone has like a bigger purpose behind what they're doing. Does that affect like what you want to do in your future work at all? You have a thought about that, or is it like whatever work I do, in addition to that, I'm going to serve and find purpose outside of it?
That's always been like the bigger question. I've always been so certain in my career path. Besides that, like how I balance service with trying to achieve everything I want to achieve at the same time is such a big question. I think it can go hand in hand. I recently took a very unique class that I learned a lot from, coinciding with my Zambia trip called Servant Leadership. And I think that's like one of the biggest classes that I've learned the most from my time at Chapman University is kind of balancing both. And then the Zambia trip was such a case study. And I think, yeah, recently at this internship, I've been able to discover that producers get to travel a lot and film stuff, and then as well as edit. So I'm kind of hoping to balance a more stable career with also being able to travel and continue to help nonprofits for free because they don't have the money. That's the whole reason I started is because they don't have the money to do the high level marketing and that sort of thing. And so I think it's great that like hopefully other students like me, I've seen a few others continue to help out in that way while we can because we learn a lot from it as well.
I mean, it is number one, and expensive. It can be very expensive as an industry, but it's also like very competitive. And man, I'm gonna go all the way back into my old VHS days and SVHS days, but it was like we tried to find like a niche where we would price things and do different things than bigger production companies when we started our different thing. But one thing that I'm hearing you do a lot is seeing gaps and creating opportunities. You don't sit around much, and you are a continuous learner. So. I get it, and I can still sense a little bit of the intimidation, right? As you're growing and everything. I mean, I'm still intimidated in a lot of different rooms, as well. But how have you approached like continuing to build that confidence in a space that is really difficult to break into or be a part of? I mean, you're at HBO though. I think you made it. I don't know.
Yeah. I think, yeah, there's definitely a big imposter syndrome element to
Yeah.
it. And I think my technique, as you've heard from how I've been speaking, is like be honest about the intimidation because everybody feels it. They just don't always say it. And especially because I'm still a student and I can kind of hide behind that, like, oh, I'm an intimidated student and I
Mhm.
feel this way. I think mentors are more likely to like, be able to better assist you than if you were saying, "Oh, I'm a professional, I got it. I've already have so much experience under my belt." Because it's never true, and I'm probably gonna have this imposter syndrome 20 years from now and that sort of thing. I'm sure. But yeah, yeah, I think the biggest thing is just to always ask for help. For me, it's been easier to ask people that are a bit lower in the ladder, but at HBO, who just recently graduated college, like how they're managing. Fortunately, working at these companies, there's a lot of really intelligent people that just have a lot under their belt. And so I've been very fortunate to like feel seen by them. And then once you get to know like one or two people, they make you feel a little bit less intimidated, a little bit more like you belong, even if you don't feel it. And I learned at HBO, they have like a lot of little intern series, and one of them was about imposter syndrome. And they basically said there's a lot of different kinds of imposter syndrome, a lot of different things. For me, I forget what it was called, but it's like talent imposter syndrome. Like there's a lot of really talented, crazy individuals in my industry. And so sometimes I feel like I don't know it all, but I think I had to remind myself that I started in high school at trade school, constantly Googling and YouTubing how to edit as I went along with an editing project. And it's always about learning through the moment. You're never gonna be the best, but just, keep track of the people that are in your corner and continue to learn with everything you do.
The imposter syndrome, to your point, it'll be my 20th high school like grad high school reunion this year, and I still get imposter syndrome, like it doesn't go away. But I think it keeps you honest, and it keeps you humble and hardworking. It like that mindset. Like I intentionally don't want an ego in the work I do, because I think that kind of puts blinders on in ways that aren't necessarily helpful. So I think it's a strength. And I think it has like been a strength for me. So if that is helpful at all to your 20-year outlook, you can feel like, yeah, okay. I just sit with it. And I'm like, I'm okay with it. So, 20 years from now, maybe you'll have a similar take. So I, you, you said you recently just said you're like, I've felt like pretty clear in my path, and knowing what I want to do for a career, seemingly from that middle school experience. And people always are saying like, just follow your passion, just do what you love, like, and all this stuff. So what did you have to do, right, in order to make your passion or the work you're doing now a pathway? Like, I know I listed all that stuff that you've done, and I don't know if some or all of those have led you to like where you are now, but like, people just say like follow your passion, and I can get kind of lost in the sauce. Like, so what does that mean? And how do you make a passion a pathway?
I've always agreed that it's easy to get lost, and it's not the same for everybody. I remember going into college, I had a friend who didn't know what she wanted to do, was undeclared, and went into community college. And that's really chill. That's probably what I would have done if I didn't find trade school. And I think the pathway is, like a road, and it goes in different turns, and you can choose to go across the intersection or that sort of thing. And I think for people who are feeling uncertain, I think just take the step that feels right. And maybe that is just following your passion or whatever. And that could be wrong, but it could lead you to something even greater. And you just have to move somewhere. You can't just stay stagnant. And that's always been my thought process. I'd say I started going into college thinking I wanted to be a like film editor. And that has changed. And I think a lot of other people might not see that the change between like editing for marketing or editing for TV is any different. But for me, that can be a big change. And so, no, it's not linear, but I've always known I've wanted to be creative. That might change. I might become a teacher in the future. I might, do whatever. Never know. And I can't control it. So just keep pushing. I'm very lucky to have been in a lot of great places from trade school to like my background. And so I'm just taking it as it comes, which is very fun.
For two educators, I think you would be a great educator. And I mean, just yeah, I mean, I would learn. Now I'm like, All right, so I know a little bit of the other platforms, and I'm like, well, let's that you've edited on. I'm like, oh, what's the difference? You got this iMovie over here, and some of the things there. Mine are way old. Mine were on stone tablets, Allie. So like, yeah, it was. You know how they did, you cut the film. You'd actually, in college, there were courses where you actually, I don't know if you still had that, so I'm totally dating myself there. But
Like,
hey,
no.
for students who have an interest, right, but don't know how to turn it into something real, right? Say yeah, I saw this picture and I want to make that real for me. What do you think is a good like starting point for them? What should they do next?
Because you're talking about cutting on film and that sort of thing, and because of the rise of AI and that sort of thing, I think you just need to realize we're in a digital age, and a lot of the things that people are interested in are online. And that's how I discovered film and didn't know I would be at HBO 6 years ago and that sort of thing.
Mhm.
And I can't speak for other careers, so I won't get too in depth with it, but I'd say. It depends. I know everyone has different means too. They don't have the same access to me for trade school, even.
Mhm.
Like, I just happen to have a trade school in my area. And so I can't say go to trade school, if you're interested in plumbing or anything like that. But yeah, I would just say find whatever means you can and just go at it full force. Don't listen to what your parents say, not that sort of thing. Um, yes, you'll need to make an income.
Mhm.
I'm still figuring that out too.
Sure.
But yes, just yeah, use the tools you have, whatever you have.
So kind of following that up a little bit, like so, I mean, you did have this amazing school experience, and again, Marcus talked about it, but even then, there are some academic pieces to that. So what in this journey, like let's go back into high school or even into the post-secondary, like what did school give you, and what did you have to go find like outside of school?
What did school give me? It's a deep question. Because I'd say I didn't learn anything from math and science that went out the window. So I'll say not that. History out the window. Um, but I would say like making connections. I would say building comfortability and confidence within myself, stuff that I kind of led the conversation with. Being able to touch things physically with a hands-on learning experience for me is how I learn and learn the best. And it comes a lot more intuitively in college. And so that's something you can easily take away. Taking away mentors. My teacher, Mr. Davey from Middlebucks Institute of Technology. I still email him every semester. This is what I'm doing because I think also mentors like that need to know like how far they have taken me. And I'm like so
Mhm.
grateful every day. I'm so guilty because I still use him as like a scholarship recommender and that sort of stuff. So I feel like I have to update him. But
Mhm.
like I know like if I was a mentor, I want to know like the educators in my life are like so meaningful and I think are even cooler than like filmmakers. And so that's why I'm so excited to be on this podcast.
I'm down with that. I'm down. We're cooler than filmmakers, Allie. Let's
Mhm.
go.
I mean, you heard it here first. And we're like giving you all these tough questions, and you're like, I love this.
Yeah.
Uh, okay. So one of the kind of like biggest misconceptions in education that we talk about on the podcast is that students need to have like a destination figured out before they even begin. And they have to have it figured out without like they just have to like pull it from the air sometimes.
Mm.
They are necessarily given the tools to or experiences to kind of figure that out. And I think like, you know, man, I we just had Chris Nesmith on the podcast, and he is
Mhm.
such a big advocate for middle school career exploration. And like your story is just it's just hitting his work out of the ballpark because
Mhm.
that's literally what he advocates is that you're like, oh, I had this light bulb moment, and it came from that career exploration, such a pivotal time. And so I love hearing that you had a experience that gave you uh, a direction. and you didn't have to figure it out all on yourself. You had a lot of help, and you mentioned like your mentors and everything throughout here. So you have a really awesome story, Samantha. And I loved hearing about the storytelling aspect being really important to you. So I'm going to ask you another tough question, maybe. What story are you hoping to tell next? And what do you hope students will learn from your story?
I'll start with what I was recently trying to tell with that Zambia trip. I'm a treasurer at like the documentary organization of Chapman University, so it's like all the documentary lovers there. And I think the biggest story that I've been trying to tell is strictly to filmmakers right now. And that your career path doesn't have to be linear and that film can do so much more. Even if you're working on like these big fantasy films, they have very important messages, and it's very crucial that you write those in the right way. And I think, with my Zambia doc, I think I wanted to show that like service leadership that I learned in my class through that work, and how like I think for me that Zambia documentary was about showing the joy in the kids. Even after they had just gone through a procedure, they were just grateful to be there. And that's because of these like doctors who were once in college at the time, you know, came here all this way, unpaid, paying for their flights just to do this. And so, like, these filmmakers are so lucky to be here too, and that they can give that gift away too. And so I think as like a student filmmaker, I think that's the biggest message that I can give to like my peers. And I think that's the place to start before any like larger audiences.
Wow, that's very
Amazing.
powerful. And I'm, I'm a little older than you, and I still can't think at that level. I'm just saying that's so awesome. I mean, that to me, like, I think that's why we got into education, because we saw that there's an opportunity to help people. There's a way to really, I mean, yeah, we get a paycheck, but like to give back and to open people's minds and find and show their values of what they want to take and bring into the world. So I'll be looking for the documentary on you coming up here sometime. So that'll be amazing. But I think what you've really taught us today, Samantha, is that a lot of students are often told to go like find their passion, but when you pair it with some skills and understanding with experiences, especially those mentors who made a big difference in your life and action, you've said it so many times, I couldn't just sit there. I have to constantly like go and be curious and ask people about things. That's really where you build on your passion, and your story today has really helped our listeners with that. The other thing that I wanted to mention was, yes, even though you want to go back and update the mentor for a couple of scholarship, signatures, what's very important, and I know Allie and I will talk about this later on a different podcast, but like, is that educators see what you're going through. Because for me, filmmaking is VHS tapes. For you, it's way different. And to update educators as they continue on their path, is not only like obviously helping them understand, oh my gosh, I'm so glad I made a difference, but also what can they bring back into the classroom that's even more updated to prepare you better. That's amazing stuff. So thank you for sharing that. What have we missed as we're wrapping up? How can people connect with you? That's one thing, but also like what's one last thing that you want to say out there to educators in the world who are trying to disrupt education in a good way?
I'd say to educators, like keep doing what you're doing and keep being there for kids. I think no matter if you have a huge classroom, just be there for your kids and that sort of thing. Encourage taking the unconventional route, because that's the route that nobody is, and that's where you could be best at.
Mm.
And that's the route that I'm trying to take. And I think that that's something that I don't get from teachers. It's something that's a life experience. But I think that that can be taught as well, to just be your unique and authentic self. And that's a big important thing in education, and that as well. And if you need to connect with me, I'm always here, and you can reach out to me on LinkedIn, Samantha Rosinski, or Instagram, Samantha Rosinski. I'm always here to help, and I've always responded in my LinkedIn DMs.
Solid.
He did.
Yeah. That one, just again, thank you, Samantha. I think again, your journey is a reminder that your first opportunity doesn't define your entire future. It just helps you build, and that's what we call like stackable credentials and all these different things in academic terms. But really, you found your path by creating it. So thank you for sharing that. That's such an important thing for our listeners and our educators and our students. So appreciate you being here on the Disrupt Education podcast.
Thank you for having me again. It was so much fun.
All right. For Alli Dahl, I am Peter Hostrawser. Head to disrupteducationpodcast.com. We got a lot of great stuff there. And check out that. Thank you for listening, everybody. We will catch you next week. This series is so powerful, and I just love. Big thank you to Alli for saying, "Hey, we should do this." That was a couple years ago. So we're continuing on this series, and we'll talk to you guys next week. Thanks for tuning in to the Disrupt Education podcast. If this episode sparked an idea, challenged your thinking, or helped you see education differently, well, that's exactly why we're here. We're highlighting real stories and bold ideas shaping the future of learning. A quick thank you to our sponsor, UScience BrightPath, the next generation platform helping students make personalized decisions as they move from education to career. If you're serious about connecting students to real opportunity, head to uScience.com/disrupteducation-podcast. Request a demo and let them know you heard about UScience right here on the Disrupt Education podcast. For more episodes and clips and ways to connect, you can always visit disrupteducationpodcast.com. I'm Peter Hostrawser. Keep disrupting. We'll see you next time on the podcast.